The courtroom felt colder than the winter morning outside. Lily Brown sat on the hard wooden bench beside her lawyer, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her fingers ached. She kept her eyes down, staring at the floor, afraid that if she looked up, she might lose control of herself. The room smelled faintly of old paper and polish, and every small sound felt louder than it should have been. The shuffle of shoes, the cough of a stranger, the soft tapping of a pen all made her heart beat faster. Lily had never imagined she would end up here, in a courtroom, waiting for her life to be spoken about like a problem that needed fixing. She was 26 years old, yet she felt like a frightened child again. The kind of fear she felt was not new. It was the same fear she had carried since childhood, the fear of disappointing her father. Across the room sat Richard Brown. He was dressed neatly, his back straight, his face calm and controlled. To anyone else, he looked like a respectable man who knew exactly where he belonged. But to Lily, he looked like a stranger. A stranger who shared her last name, her past, and many of her deepest wounds. He did not look at her with warmth or concern. His eyes held only judgment, sharp and distant, as if she were someone who had failed him in a way that could never be forgiven. Lily remembered how, growing up, she used to wait for moments like this. Moments when her father would look at her and be proud. She had worked hard in school, stayed quiet, followed rules, and tried to become the person he wanted her to be. But no matter what she did, it was never enough. There was always something wrong. Something missing. Something that made him sigh and shake his head. Now, sitting in court, that same feeling pressed down on her chest. The case itself scared her, but it was not the legal outcome that truly frightened her. It was the thought of her father speaking. She knew his words could hurt more than any judgment. She knew he would not protect her. He never had. Her lawyer leaned slightly toward her and whispered something reassuring, but Lily barely heard it. Her mind was busy replaying memories she wished she could forget. The night she told her father about her dreams and watched his face harden. The times he compared her to others, telling her she was careless, weak, or a burden. The silence that filled their house after arguments, thick and heavy, lasting for days. She swallowed hard and took a slow breath. Her heart felt like it was trapped in her throat. She wondered if the people in the room could sense her fear. She wondered if they could see how close she was to breaking. She told herself to stay strong, to sit still, to not cry. Crying had never helped before. Richard shifted in his seat, and the sound made Lily tense. She felt her shoulders stiffen without meaning to. She knew that soon, he would speak. He would talk about her life as if she were not sitting only a few feet away. He would tell strangers who she was, or at least who he believed she was. And she feared that once his words were spoken, they would become truth in everyone's eyes. Lily glanced around the courtroom. The judge's seat stood tall and distant, a symbol of authority she did not fully trust yet. The walls seemed too close, as if the room were slowly closing in on her. She thought about running, about standing up and walking out, but her legs felt heavy and rooted to the floor. She stayed where she was, because part of her still hoped. Hoped that maybe this time, something would be different. Her eyes finally lifted, just for a moment, and met her father's gaze. There was no softness there. No sign of regret. Only disappointment, the same look she had seen all her life. It hurt more than she expected, even now. She quickly looked away, her chest tightening as if she had been punched. Inside, Lily felt a storm of emotions. Fear, sadness, anger, and a quiet, desperate wish to be understood. She did not want to be seen as a failure. She wanted someone, anyone, to see her effort, her pain, her strength. She wanted her father to see her as a human being, not a mistake. As the court session prepared to begin, Lily closed her eyes for a brief second. She took another deep breath and tried to steady herself. Whatever was about to happen, she knew one thing. This moment would change her life forever. And though she was terrified of her father's words, she had no idea that the cold courtroom morning was only the beginning of a much deeper emotional battle. The moment finally came when Richard Brown was asked to speak. The room seemed to grow even quieter, as if everyone sensed that something heavy was about to fall. Lily felt her breath stop for a second. Her hands trembled, and she pressed them together harder, trying to keep control. She stared at the table in front of her, afraid that if she looked at her father, she would see the pain on his face and it would break her completely. Richard stood up slowly. His chair scraped softly against the floor, but the sound felt loud in Lily's ears. He cleared his throat and looked toward the judge, not once glancing at his daughter. His voice, when he began to speak, was steady and firm. It was the same voice Lily had heard all her life, the voice that never shook, never softened. He spoke about responsibility and family honor. He talked about expectations and disappointment. His words were carefully chosen, sharp but calm, like stones placed one by one. Then he said it. He said that Lily had always embarrassed him. That no matter how much he tried, she never lived up to what she should have been. That she was, in his words, a disgrace. The word hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Lily felt it hit her chest like a blow. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she had to blink several times to keep the tears from falling. She had expected harsh words, but hearing them spoken so openly, in front of strangers, hurt more than she had imagined. It felt like every fear she had ever carried was now being confirmed out loud. People in the courtroom shifted in their seats. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked curious. Lily could feel their eyes on her, judging her, measuring her worth based on her father's words. She wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Her heart pounded so loudly that she was sure others could hear it. Richard continued. He spoke about sacrifices he claimed to have made. About how hard he had worked to provide a good life. He said Lily wasted her chances and brought shame to the family name. As he talked, he never once said her name. It was as if she were not a person at all, only a problem to be explained. Lily's mind drifted back to her childhood. She remembered standing in her room as a teenager, holding a report card with good grades, waiting for praise that never came. She remembered her father's silence, his cold nods, his disappointed sighs. She remembered how she learned to hide her feelings, to swallow her pain, because showing emotion only made things worse. Now, all those memories came rushing back. Each word her father spoke felt like proof that nothing had changed. That no matter how old she grew, she would always be the daughter who failed him. Her chest tightened, and for a moment she thought she might not be able to breathe. Her lawyer glanced at her with concern, but Lily barely noticed. She was fighting a battle inside herself. Part of her wanted to stand up and scream that he was wrong. That she had tried. That she was not perfect, but she was not a disgrace. Another part of her felt small and tired, like a child who had already lost the fight before it began. Richard finally stopped speaking and sat down. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Lily felt as if the whole room was waiting for her reaction. She kept her head down, her jaw clenched, her nails digging into her palms. She refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of him. Inside, something was changing. The pain was still there, deep and sharp, but beneath it, a quiet anger began to grow. She realized that her father's words said more about him than they did about her. He had spoken without love, without care, without even trying to understand her side. Lily took a slow breath. Her body still trembled, but her mind felt clearer than before. She knew this moment would stay with her forever. Hearing her father call her a disgrace in a courtroom was one of the most painful experiences of her life. But it was also a turning point. Something inside her had been pushed too far. As the judge prepared to speak next, Lily straightened slightly in her seat. Her heart was still racing, but she lifted her chin just a little. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew she could no longer live only through her father's judgment. The words had been spoken, the wound had been opened, and there was no going back. The silence after her father's words felt endless. Lily sat very still, as if any small movement might cause her to shatter. The courtroom no longer felt cold. It felt heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts and quiet reactions. She could sense the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her chest, making each breath slow and careful. Her mind refused to stay in the present. Instead, it drifted backward, pulling her into memories she had tried to bury for years. She remembered being a little girl, standing in the living room with a drawing she had made for her father. She had held it out with hope in her eyes, waiting for him to smile. He barely glanced at it before telling her to put it away and not waste time. That was the first time she learned that her efforts did not matter. As the memories continued, they grew darker. She remembered her teenage years, when she stopped sharing her thoughts and dreams. Every time she spoke, she felt judged. Every mistake felt like proof that she was failing as a daughter. She learned to stay quiet, to hide her feelings, to pretend that his words did not hurt. But they always did. Now, sitting in the courtroom, all those moments came together like pieces of a painful puzzle. She realized that the fear she felt was not only about this case. It was about a lifetime of trying and never being enough. Her father's words had not just hurt her feelings. They had reopened wounds she had carried silently for years. Lily's chest tightened, and her eyes burned. She stared at the table, focusing on the small scratches in the wood, using them to keep herself grounded. She told herself not to cry. She had cried too many times alone, in her room, late at night, where no one could hear her. She refused to give her father the satisfaction of seeing her break. Around her, the courtroom felt distant. Voices sounded muted, like they were coming from far away. Her lawyer spoke quietly with the judge, but Lily barely noticed. She felt trapped inside her own thoughts, fighting a storm of emotions that threatened to pull her under. Anger slowly rose beneath the sadness. It was not loud or explosive. It was deep and steady. She felt angry that her father had never tried to understand her. Angry that he had chosen pride over love. Angry that he could speak about her pain so easily, without any shame. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to think something she had always pushed away. Maybe the problem was not her. The thought felt strange and dangerous, but also relieving. She had spent her whole life believing she was broken. Now, sitting there, she began to see that she had been carrying a burden that was never meant to be hers. She glanced up for a brief moment, her eyes landing on her father. He sat calmly, his expression unchanged, as if he had simply stated a fact. That look made something inside her harden. She looked away again, her heart pounding, but her mind clearer than before. This was her breaking point. Not because she was weak, but because she was tired. Tired of shrinking herself. Tired of apologizing for who she was. Tired of chasing approval that never came. She realized that even if she lost this case, she could not continue living under his shadow. Lily took a deep breath, feeling it fill her lungs. Her hands still trembled, but she did not hide them anymore. She sat a little straighter, her shoulders lifting as if she were reclaiming a part of herself. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her completely. She did not know what the judge would decide. She did not know how this day would end. But she knew that something inside her had shifted. The words that were meant to destroy her had instead brought her to a moment of truth. As she waited for the next voice to speak, Lily understood that this courtroom was not just a place of judgment. It was a place where she was finally forced to face her pain, her past, and herself. And though the moment felt unbearable, it was also the beginning of something new. The judge had been quiet for a long time, listening without interruption. Lily had almost forgotten she was there, seated high above everyone else, watching with careful eyes. Then, slowly, the judge leaned forward. The small movement was enough to change the air in the room. Conversations stopped. Even the restless shifting of chairs faded away. Lily felt her heart jump. She lifted her eyes just enough to see the judge's face. It was calm, but there was something else there too. Focus. Concern. The judge raised one hand gently, signaling for silence, though the room was already quiet. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear, carrying authority without anger. She did not look at Lily first. Instead, her eyes rested on Richard Brown. She asked him to pause and then questioned him in a measured tone. She asked if he believed his daughter's worth could truly be measured by how well she met his expectations. The question hung in the air, simple but powerful. Richard seemed caught off guard. For the first time, he hesitated. He straightened his jacket and answered, trying to explain himself, but his words sounded weaker now. The judge listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. Lily watched this exchange with wide eyes, her breath shallow. No one had ever challenged her father like this before. The judge then leaned back slightly and asked another question. She asked if Richard had ever considered how his words might affect his daughter. Whether he had ever asked her what she wanted, or what she felt. The room felt tense, like a string pulled too tight. Richard's confidence began to crack. He spoke again, but his voice lacked the same sharp edge. Lily felt something shift inside her. She was not invisible anymore. Someone in this room saw her pain. Someone was willing to speak up when she could not. Her chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with emotion she could not quite name. The judge finally turned her gaze toward Lily. Her eyes softened just a little. She asked Lily if she was able to speak, and told her to take her time. The words were simple, but the kindness in them felt overwhelming. Lily's throat closed, and she nodded slowly. As Lily prepared to speak, she realized how rare this moment was. For once, the focus was not on her failures or her father's disappointment. It was on her voice. Her truth. The judge waited patiently, giving her space in a way no one ever had before. The courtroom felt different now. It no longer felt like a place where Lily was being judged alone. It felt like a place where the truth might finally be heard. Her hands still trembled, but she did not hide them. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years pressing against her chest. Richard looked uncomfortable. He avoided her gaze, shifting in his seat. The power he had held so easily earlier was slipping away. Lily noticed this, and for the first time, she did not feel afraid of it. The judge's presence filled the room with a quiet strength. Her questions had changed the direction of everything. Lily understood that whatever happened next, this moment mattered. It was the moment when the silence around her pain was finally broken. With a shaky breath, Lily opened her mouth, ready to speak. Her heart pounded, but she felt a small spark of courage rising inside her. She did not know if her words would change the outcome, but she knew they deserved to be spoken. And as the judge waited, leaning forward with careful attention, Lily realized that this courtroom was no longer just a plaque. Lily's voice was soft when she began, almost a whisper, but the courtroom leaned into it. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care, as if each one carried the weight of her life. She told the judge that she had never wanted to be a disappointment. She had only wanted to be accepted. Her hands shook as she spoke, but she did not stop. She talked about growing up in a house where silence meant anger and approval was rare. She explained how she learned to read her father's moods, how she changed herself again and again, hoping that one day she would finally be enough. She said she had spent years believing that something was wrong with her, because that was what she had been made to feel. The courtroom stayed quiet. No one interrupted her. Even Richard remained still, staring ahead, his jaw tight. Lily did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the judge, finding strength in her steady attention. For the first time, Lily felt safe enough to be honest. She admitted that she was scared. Scared of failing. Scared of speaking up. Scared that if she stood on her own, she would lose her family forever. Her voice broke for a moment, and she paused, taking a breath before continuing. She said that she had tried her best, even when her best was never recognized. As she spoke, memories poured out of her like a confession she had held inside for too long. Nights spent crying quietly so no one would hear. Moments of joy she kept to herself because she knew they would not be celebrated. Dreams she had hidden away because she was told they were foolish. Lily told the judge that being called a disgrace had stayed with her. It had shaped how she saw herself and how she moved through the world. She said she was tired of carrying that label. Tired of apologizing for existing. Tired of shrinking to make others comfortable. Her voice grew steadier as she continued. She said she was not perfect, but she was human. She had made mistakes, learned lessons, and grown in ways no one bothered to notice. She asked the court to see her not as a failure, but as a person who deserved fairness and respect. When she finished, the room felt different. The air seemed lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted. Lily lowered her eyes, her heart racing. She felt exposed, like she had peeled away every layer that protected her. But beneath that vulnerability was a quiet sense of relief. She glanced up briefly and noticed that some people in the courtroom looked moved. Others looked thoughtful. The silence that followed her words was not uncomfortable. It felt meaningful. Richard remained quiet, his expression unreadable, but he did not speak. Lily sat back in her chair, her body trembling with emotion. She had said everything she needed to say. Whether it changed the outcome or not, she knew she had spoken her truth. And for the first time in her life, that felt like enough. The judge nodded slowly, acknowledging Lily's words. Her expression held both seriousness and understanding. Lily met her gaze, feeling seen in a way she never had before. As she waited for what would come next, Lily realized that this moment had already changed her. She had stepped out of the shadow of her father's voice and into her own. And no matter what the final decision would be, she knew she would never be silent again. The judge took a long moment before speaking again. The courtroom was so quiet that Lily could hear her own breathing. Every second felt stretched, heavy with meaning. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm, carrying a strength that filled the room. She said that a child's worth could never be decided by a parent's disappointment. She spoke about responsibility, not just legal, but emotional. She explained that parents are meant to guide and protect, not tear their children down with words that leave lasting scars. As she spoke, Lily felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with something close to hope. The judge looked directly at Richard and told him that his words had been damaging and unfair. She said that calling his daughter a disgrace showed a lack of understanding, not a failure on Lily's part. Richard sat still, his face pale, his confidence gone. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Then the judge turned back to Lily. Her voice softened slightly as she addressed her. She said that Lily had shown courage by speaking honestly, and that her life and choices deserved respect. She made her decision clear. The ruling was in Lily's favor. Lily felt a rush of emotion move through her body. Her hands began to shake again, but this time it was from relief. She did not cry right away. Instead, she sat quietly, letting the words sink in. She had won the case, but more than that, she had been believed. Around her, the courtroom slowly came back to life. People whispered. Chairs moved. Papers shuffled. But Lily felt as if she were standing still in the center of it all. She glanced toward her father. Richard did not look at her. His shoulders were slumped, his face turned away. She felt no joy in his defeat, only a calm distance. As Lily stood to leave, she felt lighter, as if something she had carried for years had finally been set down. She walked past her father without stopping. She did not wait for an apology. She did not need one anymore. Outside the courtroom, the air felt warmer, brighter. Lily took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment. She realized that her life was no longer defined by her father's voice or his approval. She had her own voice now, and it was strong. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. Healing would take time. But she also knew that she was no longer broken. She was someone who had survived, spoken up, and chosen herself. As Lily stepped forward, leaving the courthouse behind her, she felt a quiet confidence settle inside her. The past no longer held her in place. The judge's words had changed everything, but the greatest change had already happened within her. For the first time in her life, Lily walked toward her future without fear, knowing that she was not a disgrace. She was enough.